$5,000. That's what you'll get, if you agree. David Thorne's throat tightened. He looked up quickly. $5,000. That could be enough to pay Emily's medical bills, next month's rent, and buy her a winter coat. Charlotte Vance, the young millionaire, only 24 years old, stood opposite him. The dress she was wearing was probably more expensive than all the money David had earned in 6 grueling months. She paused, her sharp eyes sweeping over David Thorne, the night shift janitor. At 35, his hands were calloused from demanding manual labor, washing dishes, construction worker, and now a night janitor. But nothing could have prepared him for this moment, when the elevator doors opened and she walked straight towards him. "You're David, right?" Her voice was much softer than he'd imagined, not like a woman who owned a $200 million fortune. He looked up quickly, trying not to let his gaze meet hers. "Yes, Miss Vance, I'm almost done with my shift." "Good." She stepped closer, her high heels clicking against the marble floor. "I have an offer for you." David's throat tightened. In his bitter experience, offers from the wealthy usually meant more work, harder work, for less money. "I need to pick up my daughter from school early, Miss Vance." "Emily will worry if I'm late," he said hesitantly, trying to maintain his composure. Charlotte's expression shifted slightly, a rare flicker of softness passing through. "How old is she?" she asked. 7. "She's all I have left." "My wife, Rebecca, passed away 2 years ago," David replied, his voice softening as he spoke of his wife. Charlotte was silent for a moment, seemingly contemplating something. "I need a companion for a charity gala tomorrow night. $5,000 for a single evening. All you have to do is wear a tuxedo, smile, and make small talk. That's all." I don't know," he stammered. "I don't belong in that world, and I don't own a tuxedo. I'll take care of everything. There's only one condition. You must not ask why I need you there." "Can you do that?" Charlotte said, her eyes directly probing his. David looked out the window, where his old car sat huddled under the streetlights. He took a deep breath. "Yes, I can." "Good. Tomorrow at 7 p.m. Don't disappoint me, David Thorne," Charlotte said decisively, her voice tinged with a warning. In their small apartment, Emily Thorne was glued to the window, her breath fogging the cold pane. She was all too familiar with counting time by worry and the rumblings of her stomach. When David finally trudged up the stairs, his old work boots seemingly dragging his exhaustion, Emily was waiting at the door. On the dining table, mismatched plates and the last can of soup were laid out, waiting. "How was Daddy's princess's day at school?" David asked, forcing a weary smile, though his face was etched with fatigue. "Miss Palmer said we need money for a field trip to the Metropolitan Science Museum," Emily said softly and cautiously. At 7, she had already learned that money was something that made her father's shoulders slump and his smile fade. "How much, sweetie?" David asked, his heart heavy. $30. "But I told her I probably couldn't go, because we need to save money for Christmas, Daddy," Emily replied, her innocent eyes yet tinged with resignation. Emily's heartbreakingly nonchalant tone shattered something within David's chest. He hugged her tight. "You know what, Emily? I think we're going to have a really fun Christmas this year." "Really?" Emily looked up, her eyes sparkling with a faint glimmer of hope. "Really. Daddy has an extra job, a very good job, that pays handsomely. I have to go to a very fancy party tomorrow night, just like in the movies, with women in beautiful gowns and men in elegant suits." Emily giggled. "You'll look silly in a suit, Daddy." "Maybe so," David chuckled softly, his heart swelling with warmth and a fresh spark of hope. The next day, David stepped into the grand hall. The expensive tuxedo felt strangely restrictive. The clinking of champagne glasses, The elegant voices surrounded him. He felt out of place, like an actor trying to blend into a foreign play. He mimicked the polite smiles, the subtle nods, but deep down, he was still David, the janitor who had just cleaned public restrooms a few hours ago. He retreated to a corner, trying to make himself invisible, until his eyes met those of an older woman seated in a velvet armchair. Her silver hair was pulled back in a bun, her eyes sharp and scrutinizing. It was Elizabeth Vance, Charlotte's grandmother. She looked at him. Her gaze was peculiar, both scrutinizing and yet holding something distant, enigmatic, as if she was seeing right through him, not the tuxedo, but something much deeper. David bowed slightly, trying to smile. Elizabeth curled her lips slightly, slowly sipping her wine. My granddaughter is quite good at choosing companions, isn't she? Her voice was deep and resonant, carrying an air of authority. David flinched slightly. "Ma'am?" I said. "You seem very suited to this party." She stared at him, her eyes unwavering. "I haven't seen you here before." "Ah, yes, this is my first time," David replied, feeling the pressure of her gaze. "I have a feeling you don't belong in this world." She paused, taking another sip, and that could be an advantage. David didn't know how to respond. It was as if she knew a secret about him, a secret even he hadn't known. He could only stand there, silent, feeling a wave of unease and confusion wash over him. After the awkward greeting, David breathed a sigh of relief when Charlotte approached, signaling him to follow her. They stepped out onto a large balcony, away from the bright lights and noisy chatter. The chilly night air swept in, carrying the scent of jasmine. "Are you all right?" Charlotte asked, her back to the sparkling city below. David sighed. "I guess so. Your grandmother." She looked at me like I was a puzzle. Charlotte smiled faintly, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She has a keen eye. "But it's okay. You did well." She turned to face him, her expression turning serious. "Now for the important part." "The important part?" David asked, feeling his heart begin to beat faster. "About why you're here tonight, David." Charlotte took a deep breath. "Your father, the man you thought was dead, is actually my uncle, Robert Vance." David froze stiff. "What? No way. My father's name was Michael Thorne. He died when I was little. That's the name your mother used to protect you. Your father's real name was Robert Vance. He fell in love with your mother, Catherine Stone, and he wanted to publicly acknowledge you, his son." Charlotte looked him straight in the eyes. "But the Vance family wouldn't accept it. They paid your mother to disappear, to hide the truth, to preserve their so-called reputation. No, it can't be." David took a step back, feeling as if the world was spinning. His life, his memories, all of it was distorted. "And then," Charlotte continued, her voice cold as ice, "Robert Vance died in a car accident. A staged accident." David was rocked to his core. "My father was murdered?" Charlotte nodded. "I've been investigating my father's murder for the past 3 years, and I've realized I'm also a target of the same killer." She looked at him with a determined expression. "Now, do you understand why I needed you here?" "No, you're lying. This is a sick joke. My father is dead. My mother, she's also passed away." His voice cracked, everything he believed in collapsing. "I don't believe you." He spun around, wanting to leave the balcony, to escape these insane words. "David, wait!" Charlotte called after him, but he didn't listen. He just wanted to get out of there, away from the horrifying truth she had just told him. He quickly stepped through the balcony door, intending to head straight out. But just then, Elizabeth Vance, Charlotte's grandmother, reappeared. She was standing right at the threshold, blocking his path. Her sharp eyes locked onto him, no longer scrutinizing, but instead frighteningly stern. "You can't leave, David," Elizabeth said, her voice deep and firm, making him stop. "You don't believe Charlotte? Fine. But there's one thing you need to know." David looked at her, his chest heaving with panic. "What do you mean?" "The one who killed your father," Elizabeth said, each word slow and clear, as if to etch them into his mind. "He knows about your existence. And he knows about Emily." David froze solid. "Emily?" he whispered, his throat tight. Elizabeth nodded slowly. "He knows you have a daughter, and that makes both you and her targets." She looked him straight in the eyes without a trace of pity, only the stark truth. "Now, do you still want to leave?" The news about Emily was like a knife plunging into David's heart. He spun back to Charlotte, his eyes full of panic and fury. "You knew about this? You knew Emily was in danger and still kept it from me?" Charlotte stepped closer, her face resolute, but also tinged with a hint of sorrow. "That's why I needed you here tonight, David. I need you to cooperate with me. Only you can help me find that killer." She took his hand, her gaze direct. "In return, I will ensure Emily's absolute safety at all costs." David stared at her, an image of little Emily, her innocent smile flashing in his mind. Emily's safety. That was all he cared about. "How can I trust you?" "You lied to me about my father." Charlotte took a deep breath, as if preparing for an even greater shock. "There's one more thing I've been forced to keep secret until this moment. About your mother, Catherine Stone." "My mother is dead," David snapped. "She passed away when I was very young." "No, David," Charlotte said, her voice grave. "Your mother is still alive. She faked her death to protect you." David felt as if he had just been dealt a devastating blow. His whole world once again crumbled. His father murdered, his mother alive and faking her death. All for him? Faked her death to protect me? "What the hell are you talking about?" he almost shouted, his voice trembling. "That's right," Charlotte confirmed, her eyes unwavering. "She disappeared so the killer couldn't find you. She's lived in the shadows for years, just to keep her son safe. And now, with the killer knowing about you and Emily, she needs our help more than ever." David stood there, stunned. Too many horrifying truths crashing down at once. He looked at Charlotte, at Elizabeth, standing silently behind her, then out into the deep night. His life, Emily's life, was threatened by an invisible enemy, and the mother he thought he had lost was somewhere, living in secrecy for his sake. That night, David couldn't sleep a wink. Charlotte's and Elizabeth's words echoed in his mind. Father murdered, mother faked her death, and Emily was in danger. He tossed and turned until his phone vibrated softly. An unknown number. He opened it, his hands trembling. There was only one photo, a photo of a corner of Emily's bedroom. The small bed with a teddy bear, the messy desk, and especially the pink coat Emily had just worn to school, draped over a chair. Along with it, a short, chilling message. "Emily seems to like pink." David's blood ran cold. He had broken into his house. He had been there, in his daughter's room. He knew about Emily. A surge of rage and fear erupted violently, burning away any remaining doubt. It was no longer a far-fetched story. It was the truth. Emily was in real danger. He immediately called Charlotte. "He knows about Emily." His voice choked with fear and anger. "He broke into my house." "Calm down, David. I'll send people immediately to protect Emily," Charlotte replied, her voice resolute. "Now do you believe me?" "I believe you," David gritted out. The next morning, under a gray sky, David arrived at Willow Creek Park. His heart was heavy. each step carrying a burden of hatred and a fierce determination to protect his daughter. He walked along the paved path, past the bare winter trees, until he saw a man leaning against an old oak tree. He was a middle-aged man, tall, wearing an expensive wool coat. His face exuded a calm, almost elegant demeanor. "David Thorne?" The man spoke, his voice unsettlingly calm. David looked straight at him, his chest tightening. "Gregory Sterling?" Gregory nodded slightly, offering a faint smile. "A pleasure to finally meet you, or rather, to finally get to meet you." He extended his hand, but David made no move to reciprocate. In that moment, as David's eyes focused on Gregory, an image suddenly flashed in his mind. A faded old photograph that his mother, Catherine, used to keep. It showed his father, Michael or Robert, smiling radiantly beside another man. A man with the same smile, the same eyes, and the same demeanor. Robert Vance's closest friend, Gregory Sterling. David trembled uncontrollably. There he was, the one who had murdered his father, the one who had forced his mother into hiding, the one who had deprived him of a complete childhood. And now he was threatening Emily. "You," David whispered, his throat constricted. "You were my father's friend." Gregory maintained his calm smile, as if David had stated the obvious. "Yes, Robert and I were the best of friends, until things got complicated." He shrugged, as if discussing trivial gossip. "I'm very sorry about what happened to your father. An unfortunate accident." "Accident?" David growled, his eyes red with hatred. "How dare you call it an accident? You killed him!" The smile vanished from Gregory's lips. He looked at David with a scrutinizing gaze, then sighed. "So you know, Charlotte told you, didn't she? That girl is such a nuisance." He took a step back, hands in his pockets, his eyes cold as knives. "So, what now, David? What are you going to do? Yell and call the police? Who would believe a janitor?" "What? What did you do to my father?" David struggled to suppress his simmering anger, knowing he had to remain calm. This was his only chance. Gregory smirked. Robert was too weak. He wanted to reveal he had an illegitimate child, with a woman from an unsuitable background. That would ruin everything. Ruin the Vance family's reputation. Ruin our company. I couldn't let that happen. He paused, looking at David with contempt. I gave him a chance, but he didn't listen. So, I had to act. A simple accident. No one suspected. Everything went back on track. "You're a monster," David hissed. Gregory let out a derisive laugh. "Monster? I am the one who protects what belongs to us. And now you are also threatening everything." He took another step towards David, his eyes full of menace. "You seem quite stubborn, just like your father. I don't want to harm you, David, but if you keep meddling in this, then Emily will suffer the consequences." David knew this was the moment. He clenched his fists. "You've said too much, Gregory." Gregory raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Just then, Charlotte emerged from behind a nearby bush, her face cold and determined. She said nothing, only held up her phone, which was recording. A tiny microphone was discreetly taped to David's jacket. Gregory Sterling saw the phone, then looked at Charlotte, and finally his gaze turned to David. His face shifted from smugness to utter shock, then quickly morphed into furious rage. You recorded it!" he roared, lunging towards Charlotte. But before he could reach her, an unmarked black van suddenly screeched to a halt beside them. The sliding door opened. Several fully equipped FBI agents stepped out, pistols drawn, aiming directly at Gregory. "Federal Bureau of Investigation. Gregory Sterling, you are under arrest for murder and threats." A tall agent, wearing sunglasses, declared coldly. Gregory stood frozen, his face pale with horror and surprise. He looked at David, at Charlotte, then stared at the agents surrounding him. All his confidence, his previous composure, had completely vanished, replaced by utter desperation and fury. He tried to resist, but two agents quickly moved in, wrestled him to the ground, and handcuffed him. "No, you can't do this. I, I am Gregory Sterling. I didn't do anything. This is a mistake." He struggled, trying to shout, but his voice was quickly drowned out by the tight control of the FBI. David stood there, watching Gregory being subdued, the heavy burden that had weighed on him for so long suddenly dissipating. The hatred still remained, but now it was replaced by a strange sense of relief. Justice had finally been served for his father. Charlotte walked closer to David, gently placing a hand on his shoulder. "It's over, David," she said, her voice tinged with weariness but also determination. "Everything is finished." He nodded, speechless. The cold wind still blew through the park, but now David felt a warm ray of sunshine piercing into his life. The enemy had been caught. Now was the time to protect what he loved most. The following days passed like a dream. Gregory Sterling was charged and faced justice. The truth about Robert Vance, about the murder and the dirty schemes of the Vance family, gradually came to light. But the most important thing for David now was reunification. He took Emily to meet an elderly woman with silver hair, a gentle smile, but eyes filled with unspoken sorrow. It was Catherine Stone, David's mother, whom he had thought lost long ago. The reunion was tearful, between David and the mother who had sacrificed her life to protect him, and between Catherine and her precious granddaughter whom she had only dared to watch from afar. From now on, they would no longer have to hide. David decided to move closer to his mother so Emily could grow up in the loving embrace of their entire family. When things settled down, Charlotte handed David a stack of documents. "These are your father, Robert Vance's inheritance papers," she said, her expression serious. "He left behind a vast fortune. All of it is yours, David." David looked at the stack of papers without a trace of greed. He had been through too much to understand that the true value of life was not in money. "I don't need all this money, Charlotte," he said calmly. "My father was killed for money. I don't want to live in the shadow of that greed." He thought for a moment. "I just need a small portion, enough to ensure Emily has a stable life, a full education, and never has to worry about medical bills again." Charlotte nodded, her eyes filled with respect. "So what do you want to do with the rest?" David looked out the window, where Emily was playing with her grandmother, Catherine. An idea suddenly sparked. "Let's establish a charity, Charlotte, named the Vance Legacy Fund. Use this money to help people in difficult circumstances. Single-parent families like mine used to be. Children who need medical care, who need to go to school." Charlotte smiled, the most genuine smile David had ever seen on her. "I'd be happy to, David. That's a wonderful idea." And so, David Thorne, once a night shift janitor, did not become a millionaire. Instead, he became an exemplary father, a dutiful son, and a passionate social activist. His life had completely changed, not just materially, but also in its purpose. His love for Emily, his courage in facing the truth, and his compassion to help others had reshaped his destiny. He found a new family, a new purpose, proving that love and courage can change fate and create good things beyond expectation.